We are honored to welcome Touro Law Center's 2024 Commencement Speaker, the 55th Governor of New York and Vice President of Diversity, Inclusion, and Belonging at Touro University, Governor David Alexander Paterson. Governor Paterson became the 55th Governor of the State of New York on March 17, 2008. In his first address as governor, he spoke about the challenges facing New York and his plans to build a better and brighter future for all citizens. He was ahead of the national curve in predicting and acting on the state's financial downturn. He foretold of an impending national fiscal crisis and collapse. During his term, he enacted legislation attaching severe criminal penalties to predatory lending and reduced New York's fiscal deficit by nearly $40 billion. One of his greatest achievements was establishing a new budget process that has yielded on-time budgets since he left office. Governor Paterson earned his BA in History from Columbia University and his JD from Hofstra Law School. He began his political career when he was elected to represent Harlem in 1985 at the age of 31, making him the third youngest state senator in New York's history. In 2002, he was elected minority leader of the New York State Senate, becoming the first African American and first blind legislative leader in the state's history. Governor Paterson has previously chaired the New York State Democratic Party, served on the board of the Metropolitan Transportation Authority, taught as an adjunct professor of government at NYU, hosted radio talk shows, and is currently working with Las Vegas Sands Corp in its efforts to expand casino gaming, while also serving as Touro's inaugural Vice President of Diversity, Inclusion, and Belonging. In his spare time, although I'm not sure he has found much time, he has recently published his autobiography, Black, Blind, and in Charge, a story of visionary leadership and overcoming adversity. Please join me in welcoming Governor David Paterson to the podium.
Dean Langen, Provost Sulkin, Rabbi Krupka, to all the members of the faculty and the administration, and to all of the family members and friends who are so gushing with pride that you, the 2024 graduating class of Touro Law School, and to all of you who are graduating, congratulations. Now I would like to know whose idea it was to have me speak after Dean Berman. I don't understand that. I can't believe that there's actually someone on this planet like her. How could a mind be able to teach law and English, which have got to be the two most counterintuitive areas you could ever visit? But I really enjoyed her remarks, and it's amazing that this school has her. I was originally introduced. I was going to stop them from clapping, but I knew you wouldn't want me to. Also, my original association with Touro College goes back to 1987, when the then dean of the law school came to visit me and asked me could I help the school with some activities. He is Dean Howard Glickstein. He's here with us today. So I'm David Paterson. I'm a recovering governor. And at this point, I think it's important for all of us to really look at what the outlook would be for the graduating class. We live in a society which Ms. J really explained very well, is where there are rapid movements and sometimes no movements at all, and that the ideal takes a long time to become reality as opposed to all the effort that goes into it. In that regard, I happened to see 2 days ago on television that there are 3 countries, Ireland, Norway, and Spain, 3 world powers, by the way, who have decided that there should be peace in the Middle East. That's a real novel concept that they came up with. And the other was that they wanted the Palestinian state to be in a 2-state formula. Not like that hasn't been talked about before, but it could happen. So what they were really doing is trying to find a way to be involved without being of any type of antagonism or amorous toward any of the parties who are currently at war. And that's a beneficial concept. However, on the same day, the International Court came to the conclusion that the head of the Israeli government and others should be arrested. Now, I don't know how they could come to that conclusion. To me, it would be like having 80 years ago Prime Minister Churchill and President Roosevelt arrested, and oh, by the way, we're going to arrest Adolf Hitler as well. It really didn't do anything to try to foster any kind of peace, any kind of negotiation. It's almost as if they wanted to be heard but not heard at the same time. And it is our onus to try to grapple with all of these forces moving in different directions, and some of what we hear and see is absolutely deplorable. But what we can look to as graduating students this year is our own history of America, who didn't exactly start out with any kind of benefit for certain individuals. From the founding Constitution, Article 1, Section 2, Clause 3, which provides for the existence of slavery, and then Article 4, Section 2, Clause 3, which provides for the recovery of runaway slaves, although in my journal it says this is probably not needed now after the 14th Amendment. How comforting. The issue of almost the entire first 100 years of this country was how to deal with the slavery problem, from the Louisiana Purchase in 1803, which was inevitably charged by the Missouri Compromise of 1820, allowing for Missouri to be a slave state and there be no slavery north of the 36th parallel, those being the horizontal parameters of the circumference of the earth, meaning that you couldn't really have slavery north of St. Louis, Missouri. All through the 1830s, 40s, and then right before 1850, Texas was admitted to the Union as a slave state, and then after the Compromise of 1850, California was admitted as a free state. Utah and New Mexico were held as neutral territories. Slavery was eradicated in Washington, D.C., and the Runaway Slave Act was part of this as well. And then in 1854, all hell broke loose in what was called the Kansas-Nebraska Act, where the parties couldn't agree on anything, all of this leading to the Supreme Court decision in 1857, the Dred Scott case, where the court ruled 7-2 that Dred Scott couldn't even bring a case because he was not 5/5 of a man, but only 3/5 of a man, and therefore could not be a citizen of the United States and couldn't therefore use the courts of the United States system. So when you look at all of that, Judge Roger B. Taney, in his statement after the case was where the ruling was held, he said that there was no opportunity for there to ever be any alleviation of slavery in the United States. So that had to be the worst day of all for abolitionists. But when we look back at history, it was 6 years before the signing of the Emancipation Proclamation by President Lincoln in 1863. He had to re-sign it again on September 22nd of 1863 because it didn't include some of the United States territories. And at that point, he freed the slaves. Now, it was only 6 years later. If you heard the arguments in the courthouse of the Supreme Court during the case being heard of Dred Scott, you would think that any kind of real freedom or any kind of real resolution to this problem had to be decades, if not perhaps a century away. And that's what I think for all of you who are graduating today is the hope that no matter what else is going on around us, we have an opportunity to change it, and we have an opportunity to change it faster than we ever could. And in trying to change it, sometimes you'll be out there by yourself with no one to help you, but you do have your degree from Toro. And so we've had a pretty direct and very tremendous program here today. So I thought it might end on a note where I give you a little advice based on my experience right after I came out of law school. So I come out of law school and I take the bar exam in February that year, and I go to the Queens DA's office where I'm an assistant district attorney practicing under supervision. And in the first 6 weeks, May 20th, my 29th birthday, my boss comes up to me and says, "Happy birthday," which coming from him I didn't see as something positive. He said, "What would you like to do on your birthday?" I said, "Oh, Al, after work maybe we'll all go out and have a drink." He said, "You have a drink after every birthday. Why don't you do something you've never done before in your life?" I said, "What would that be?" He said, "Why don't you take a case to court?" I mean, I've been here 6 weeks. I came in on the same day as a guy who was a trial lawyer for 5 years, and he wants me to take the case into court. He said, "Don't worry about it. This is easy. The defendant is out of his mind. He cannot help himself. He can't assist his counsel. All you have to do is go into court and let it be known that 2 court-ordered psychiatrists say that he's unfit to proceed, and then we're going to have a celebration because I think you're going to be a good attorney." So I go into court. They call the case, the state versus Ronald Galella. When I'm 95 years old and on a ventilator, should you happen to come in the room, just say Ronald Galella and I'll wake up right away. So I get up and I said, "I'm Assistant District Attorney David Paterson, representing the Queens District Attorney's Office. 2 court-appointed psychiatrists have examined Mr. Galella and have come to an agreement by reason of medical certainty that he cannot assist his lawyer in his defense, and he cannot be of any assistance in the near future. Therefore, we are suggesting that he be sent to a psychiatric institution under an order of retention for 1 year, at which time he be re-examined." I nailed it. I'm very happy with myself. And if that's all there was, I would sit down right now and not tell you what happened next. The defense gets up and they say, "We agree with Mr. Patterson. However, Your Honor, Mr. Galella has written you a letter. And if you would read Mr. Galella's letter, he has promised to abide by any decision you make." So they passed the letter up to the judge, and the judge looks at the letter, and I'm standing there shivering because I know, which my boss had told me 10 times, if the defense sees something, we have to see it. So I stepped up a little and said, "I'd like to take a look at that letter." The court clerk looks down at me like, "You want to look at that letter?" I'm thinking, so I guess my visual disability has gotten around the courthouse. Everybody knows about it. But my boss encouraged me to always be tough in these situations. I said, "Yes, I would like to see it, and I'd like to see it now." So he gives me the letter. Now I have the letter, but I know that I can't read the letter. But I think, listen, these people, they don't know what I can read and what I can't read. So I hold the letter up and I start moving it around like I'm reading it. And then the clerk puts his hand out, he tries to take the letter. I said, I'm not finished reading. He said, we have other cases to do. I said, and we'll get to them when I'm finished reading this letter. I go back to reading it, and I hear this murmur in the background, like something has gone terribly wrong, and I'm wondering what it could be. And then this gentleman, his name was Leonard Lavotie, I actually appointed him to be a judge 27 years later when I'm governor, but he comes up to me that day and he says, David, please give them back the letter. Mr. Galella never wrote a letter. He's insane. He just wrote the letter G up and down the page. For the last 3 minutes, you've been reading a page full of G's, and everybody behind you can see it. So I pass the letter back up to the clerk. He snatches it, and the judge says, the only thing I find more profound than that letter is the prosecutor's appreciation for it. So when everyone leaves the courtroom, I'm just sitting there, and my boss comes, and he puts his arm around me, and he said, listen, I asked you to send someone to a psychiatric institution. You did it. Let's go out and have drinks. Well, that was what he said then. After he had 3 drinks, he's like, I couldn't believe it. Paterson's holding up this letter. It doesn't say anything at all, and he's trying to convince people that he's reading a letter written by another human being. So when you get in these jams, as I did on Friday, May 20th, which was a Friday afternoon, you just go through the weekend and come back Monday as if nothing ever happened, and all of you will do very well. Thank you very much.